Hello and welcome to Todd Talk, where insight meets inspiration. I'm your host, Todd Hiller, and I'm an author, speaker, and longtime community leader, here to guide you on a journey towards fulfillment and balance. In every episode, we'll explore ways to fill life's emptiness, helping you uncover practical tools to create harmony, purpose, and happiness. Whether it's thriving in your career, nurturing personal growth, or simply finding joy in the everyday, Todd Talk is your space for real conversations and actionable advice. So let's thrive together, personally, professionally, and beyond. This is Todd Talk, and I'm thrilled to have you here. I never realized how many things a flat tire could teach me. I really didn't. Yesterday, I had some time to myself. The kids were at sports, and I had a chance to have some free time to myself. And when I have free time, if you know me at all, you know that I have 6,489 things I want to do in the amount of time that it will take to probably do 3 of them. But I was excited, and I said, I have some free time. Let's figure out what to do. Now, what I thought about doing was staying home and coming up to my desk and grabbing my microphone and recording this podcast episode, and I had a different topic in mind. And then I also thought, well, I have some chores to do out in the yard that I want to get to, and I have some things I could do down at the farm, and I have some things I could do in my garage and clean up my workbench. And then I got thinking, well, I also want to run and get some bark mulch to dress up the yard around all the flowers and bushes and plants, and I also want to run to the grocery store quick to grab something, and I also want to stop at the firehouse and pick something up, and all these things ran through my brain. So, like any good overachieving servant's heart having, sometimes I don't know when to just sit still and rest and do nothing person that I am, I grabbed my keys and out the door I went. And so I had three big things on my mind. I said, I'm going to go to the firehouse and pick something up that is there, that is not pressing. I didn't need it right away, but I was just going to go see if it was there so I could grab it. And then I was going to go to Tractor Supply and look for bark mulch. And then I was going to run to Home Depot if Tractor Supply didn't have the bark mulch and get a couple of things while I was there as well. And so off I went, and the route I go all the time. Now, I pulled up to the stoplight where I usually turn right to go to the firehouse. And instead, I said, well, I'll go one more stoplight because it's a little more direct. And, it's not really a little more direct. It's just one more cross street up that's kind of a little more in line with the firehouse. So I went up to the next traffic light, and I took a right, and I said, whatever. I didn't say anything, really. I was just driving. And I got to one point, actually, the point where we went to a structure fire a couple months ago at this house. And I looked at it, and I stopped to kind of see what they were doing and see if they started to rebuild it or anything. And I started to pull away. And about 5 feet up the road, I heard a hissing noise. And I thought, oh, no. I knew right away what it was. And I had hoped maybe I don't know what I hoped. Maybe my valve stem cap had come off or had gotten bent a little bit, and it was just a super slow leak. So I pulled over and looked, and there in the top of my tire was a big old giant chunk of metal. And I mean like a big chunk. It was, I don't even know what it is. It's like this 3-prong thing. It looks like the center of a steering wheel off a kid's toy, but it's really heavy metal. I have no idea what it is. But I do know that it was in my tire, and it shouldn't have been in my tire. And now the initial thing started to happen. I'm like, bro, I didn't need this. I didn't need to get a flat tire. I didn't need to run this over. Good Lord, why now? Now I have this thing in my tire, and now it's time to start making a plan, right? I'm like, well, I know I have a spare tire, but maybe I can get a plug in it. So I'm like, well, I could drive home. I know I have tire plugs in my garage. But looking at the piece of metal, I'm like, that thing's kind of big. A plug might not fix it as well as it should. And then I thought, well, there's a Ford dealership not far from where I am right now. And thankfully, it's owned by someone that has known me since I was born. My uncle worked at this Ford dealership for 20-something years. And so I said, well, I'll take a chance. They don't close until 6 o'clock. It's before then. I think it was 5. So I drove there, and I pulled in the parking lot, and I asked the girl at the service desk if any of the mechanics or the techs were still in, and she said, no, I'm sorry, they all went home at 4:30. I said, okay, no big deal. I said, is the parts person here, who I also know, he lives in my town? And she said, no, he's gone home too. So then I asked for the owner, and I asked if he was there, and she kind of looked at me and said, yes, he's in the showroom. And I said, okay, I'll go find him. So I went and found him, and he's like, hey, kid, what's up? How are you? What's going on? And I said, what are the odds you got a tire plug in your desk drawer? And he laughed, and he said, not very good. Why? And I said, you got any in the shop? And so he said, maybe. He said, we might have one somewhere, but why? What happened? So I told him, and we went out and looked at it, and it was a pretty big puncture. So we both agreed that a plug really wasn't going to work. But I was able to at least, I said, I'll change it in the parking lot so I don't have to do it on the side of the road at least. He said, no, come on. He said, he opened the door to the shop. He said, pull in here where it's flat and it's a flat, clean concrete floor. We'll get you a jack. Like, don't struggle with it. Just, we'll get you some stuff. So the service manager was still working, super nice kid. And he came out and helped me. And we got the tire changed and was able to put some air in the spare because it needed to be aired up a little bit and inflated a little bit. So in the grand scheme of things, it really wasn't all that bad. As far as flat tires go, it wasn't too bad. Now, it didn't make me happy. It didn't leave me feeling happy, obviously, but I was frustrated in the moment, and I don't know that I would call it inconvenienced because the errands that I was running really weren't pressing. Turning around and going to the Ford dealership I didn't really lose anything. I wasn't trying to get to a kid's soccer game or an appointment or to work or anything. It was just that inconvenienced, frustrating feeling that kind of shows up when something goes wrong. So I put the spare on. I left my regular tire with the Ford dealership, and the service manager said, well, put a patch in it on Monday. I'll give you a call when it's ready and come pick it back up. And he's like, we'll even put it back on for you if you want. So I thanked him, and I went about my way, and I went home. Now, I realize there are some days when life taps you on the shoulder, and there are other days when it drives a nail in your tire. And so I think everything can teach us a lesson. Every event, every big thing that we go through can teach us something, can teach us a lot of big lessons. And so from here, this was definitely not a tap on the shoulder with a polite reminder from life. This was a, hey, here's a nail through your tire. And so my frustration, my frustration, I know, was normal because if anybody gets a flat tire, I think the initial thing that's going to set in is anger, annoyance, inconvenience, like this why today feeling, why now, I don't want to spend money on this, I don't want to be inconvenienced, now my tire, something's wrong with my tire, and the list goes on and on, right? No one wants to have a flat tire with a big chunk of metal in it. But, my frustration may have been a natural response, but my goal, I think, as I walk through any instance in my life and any event in my life now, is my goal isn't to avoid feeling upset. It's to avoid staying upset. So obviously when something like that happens, you're going to get angry, frustrated, annoyed, all those things I just listed. But the goal is, and the really key thing is to not stay that way. Let the feeling show up, give it its due time to show up and kind of wash over you and be like, yep, it's a Friday afternoon. It's beautiful weather. I was going to do some errands and was going to have a good time and a good drive and listen to some music, maybe treat myself to a nice coffee along the way. And then all of a sudden this happens and pow, here comes something in your front tire. Awesome, right? And so the frustration is a natural response. The anger is a natural response. But the goal and the key thing to do is not to stay upset, because staying upset would have done absolutely no good. So once the thing happened, once the puncture ended up in my tire, I can't undo that, right? We can't put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak. I couldn't unpuncture the tire. I just had to deal with it, and I had to solve one problem and then solve the next one if there was a second one that popped up. So staying upset would have just gotten me to a place where I was angrily trying to battle my way through all the things that I had to do anyway. And I think that's really key. I had to drive somewhere. I had to change the tire. I had to get to a safe spot to pull over to get the tire changed. Whether it was the side of the road or the Ford dealership, didn't matter in that moment. I just had to find somewhere to change it. I had to open my glove compartment and find the special little locking key that takes the spare tire down. I had to fold my back seat forward and move the sweatshirts that are back there and find the lug wrench and the tire extension and the bar that are all custom fit to my pickup truck to get the spare tire down from underneath it. And also, so if you've never owned or driven a pickup truck, a lot of times the spare tire's in a car or in the trunk or in an SUV, they're in the hatchback. In a pickup truck, most of them, if not all of them. I don't think I've ever seen one anywhere else in a pickup. I used to carry one in the bed of my truck from one of my old trucks. It was kind of mounted on the side, but that's just because the hanger underneath was old and rusted. But anyway, I digress. So in a pickup truck, it's underneath the rear bed of the truck, and you take a long rod that comes with the truck and you slide it into this little slot with a keyway on the end of it, and you spin it counterclockwise, and there's a cable, and it lowers the spare tire down onto the ground. You unhook the cable, crank the cable back up, and then you can have your tire. But when the mechanic or the service manager at the Ford dealership went to get me a bar, his didn't fit because he grabbed one off of somebody's toolbox, but they are all custom made to the specific year and design and model of your truck. So I found mine in my glove compartment, found the bar behind my seat, took everything apart, finally got the right tools, and off we went to change the tire. Now, I would have had to go through all of that regardless, and think of how much more labor-intensive and frustrating it would have been and how much worse I would have made my day if I let the anger and annoyance of getting the flat tire stick around long enough that I did all those things while I was angry and annoyed. I would have been ripping stuff out of the back of my truck and throwing things and throwing sweatshirts and, smashing things apart because I'd be so angry trying to just get all the tools gathered. And one, that wouldn't have worked as well because, things go a little smoother when we're calm. But also, it wouldn't have changed the fact that I had to get all that stuff together if I did it when I was angry. So the whole why today mentality, it's going to show up when the bad thing happens, but you can't let it stick around, or you shouldn't let it stick around any longer than really that first moment, because it will definitely hinder and have a big lasting effect on all the things you have to go through from there forward. So don't try to avoid the frustration. Just make sure you don't sit in it and don't let it take over for the rest of your day. Because, it's okay to be frustrated. It's not okay to let that win, that emotion, that frustration win for the rest of your day or the rest of your week or the rest of your night or whatever. And also, so here's where the lessons started to show up. First of all, don't sit in the angry and don't let it take over your day. That was kind of lesson number one, right? Don't overreact and give all your energy to the things we can't control, because there are lots of things in this world we cannot control, and there are lots of things in our days that we can control. And if you focus and give your energy to the things you can control, you will be a lot better off and a lot happier, even though you might be walking through something rather difficult. So don't let that frustration win. Worry about what you can control. Don't worry too much about what you can't control. And so the other lessons that sort of showed up was, another one was it could have been worse. It could have been a lot worse. So I was on a little side street headed to the firehouse in an area that I knew very well, close to the Ford dealership. In the grand scheme of things, I could have driven home. It would have been a little dicey trying to make sure the tire didn't go all the way flat, but I probably could have made it. But I wasn't on the highway. I wasn't going 70 miles an hour and ran something over, and all of a sudden the tire exploded and blew out, and my truck shoved its way over to the shoulder, or into the guardrail or into the median, or caused an accident, or hit someone, or made it so I was uncontrollable or driving uncontrollably. I was close enough in my quote-unquote own backyard to know that I had lots of options of where I could go. Now, I also knew the owner of the Ford dealership. If I was 60 miles away from home at a travel soccer game somewhere, I would have had no idea where to go. It would have been open your GPS, try to find some place that might be open, or try to find a parking lot so you don't get hit by a car, change the tire on the side of the road, all these things. I had a spare tire. That's also something that was good. A lot of vehicles, I know a lot of people who they put their spare tire on, and then once they use it, they take it off and they put it in their garage, or they have a donut for a spare tire and it wasn't, maybe it's not full of air. It's just kind of really low, and putting it on the car is going to be just as dangerous. Now they got to find a gas station. And I was safe. Like, that's such a huge thing in this when I was trying to look through find all the good. Like, I was totally safe. Was my tire leaking? Yep, it sure was. But when I pulled over to check it, there wasn't even a car behind me when I pulled over on this little side street. Like, I just got out and was able to look at the tire and assess the situation. There weren't cars flying past me, honking their horns like, hey, get out of my way, dude. All this kind of stuff, like all these things that went right, even though like the whole flat tire thing was something that went wrong. So the situation was definitely inconvenient, but it was far from catastrophic. And I think that's really important to remember in the scheme, in the scope of when you're looking at something that goes wrong. When something goes wrong in your day, look at it through that lens. Is it inconvenient or is it catastrophic? And that can give you a really good gut check of how your reactions can kind of flow from there, whether they're going to be downhill slowly or whether they're going to be kind of crashing downhill or whether they can kind of be flat and plateau. So was it inconvenient? Yep, it was. But catastrophic could have been far worse. Like, I was not hurt. I was not killed because listen, I have a friend who's blew a tire on the highway and he's no longer with us. So, like, that's something that could have gone chaotically and catastrophically wrong. But it didn't. So, sure, I was frustrated that it happened, but I was really thankful also, once I started to think about it, that I was not in any danger and things really were going as good as they could have gone with a flat tire at hand, right? And sometimes gratitude begins when we notice how much worse things could have been. Gratitude shows up when we do a check-in and that gut check of, well, this could have been a lot worse. Thank goodness this didn't go wrong, or thank goodness this didn't happen, And like I said, thank God I wasn't on the highway. Thank God I wasn't going 70 miles an hour. Thank God I didn't get in an accident from the flat tire, that I was able to just slow down, stop, get out, check it, assess the situation, and then go take care of things from point A to point B. That's a really beautiful thing in the grand scheme of things. And so as I got changing the flat tire, and I got home, I sent a picture to my dad because the guy who owns the Ford dealership was like, "Oh, I saw your dad this morning. Like, he just stopped in." I was like, "Oh, that's cool." So sent a picture to my dad to tell him I had been there too, and the thing that got stuck in my tire. And as I did that, I got thinking, I made a joke like, shame on me for trying to run errands and be productive. I guess I should have just stayed home. And in that moment, I'm like, that might be a lesson too. You don't always need to make every trip. None of my errands were urgent. The bark mulch could definitely wait. It's going to pour rain today, the day I would have had the bark mulch to spread in the yard. It's raining, so it's not a great day to go do yard work anyway. The groceries could wait. It wasn't anything pressing we needed. It was just something I was going to check to see if they had. The firehouse item would have been there the next time I went to the station anyway. It was just so, and it's not a mystery item. One of the guys in my department, he's my captain. He's a great kid, but he's battling cancer. So they've got some fundraisers going on for him, and a bunch of us ordered T-shirts that they had made for him, and they're supposed to be coming into the station. And so I was just going to go see if the ones were there that I ordered and the ones my mom ordered some too, and just go see if I could pick them up. And that wasn't pressing. Did I want to have them so I could wear them? Yeah, I did. But did I need them right then and there? Nope, not at all. So none of these items were urgent. And so sometimes, and I think, like, looking back, I'm like, if I had just stayed home, my tire would still be perfectly fine. Period. End of story. And that makes me think, well, there might have been a lesson in here. There might have been a reason I got a flat tire. Maybe there was a reason I was supposed to go to the Ford dealership and say hello to the owner who I haven't seen in a long time, or meet the new service manager. Like, there's lots of things that I can say, well, what if I didn't do this, then I wouldn't have a flat tire. But I can also flip that on its head and say, well, if I didn't get a flat tire, I wouldn't have known the service manager. Now I've kind of got a good rapport with him because he helped me change my tire. So if I need something in the future done at this dealership, like, I could call him and we already have a connection, which is a cool thing to have. So even though my trip didn't go as planned, I kind of want to highlight two things here. One, like I talked about a minute ago, that there's lots of lessons in here, and it didn't go as bad as it could have. It was inconvenient, but not catastrophic. But also, ironically, I didn't need to make the trip to go do any of those errands. So sometimes, and the worst part was, I did say, I'm like, what, I could record my podcast. The house will be quiet. Like, I get my podcast recorded. I can go out and putz in the yard for a little bit, clean up some stuff I want to get taken care of. Those little things that you say, I never really have time to do because they're not pressing. I could do all those things around the house, but I didn't. I tried to be productive and leave. So sometimes, if your gut is telling you, hey, just stay home, if your gut is telling you, hey, just stay home and rest, take this minute to do those things that immediately came to mind when you thought about having free time, there's some good sense maybe in taking your own advice and just doing those to start. And just doing those to say that this is what immediately came to mind, so that's what I'm going to do. And it's going to work really well, and everything should be okay. And if I'd stayed home, I probably wouldn't have a flat tire. But, this doesn't mean that we should avoid living our life, right? It means that not every task deserves the urgency we assign to it. In my brain, I was thinking, I got to go get the mulch because I want to get the yard dressed up before it gets too late in the season and it's time to start mowing the lawn and yada, 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 on and on and on. But ask yourself sometimes, what are you treating like an emergency that could wait? And in this instance, I didn't need to go anywhere. I didn't even need to leave my house, but I did. And, that brought to mind the other question of what pressures do we create for ourselves that sometimes we don't need to give into? What do we assign so much urgency to that really, in the grand scheme of things, could be something that we just didn't need to make urgent at all? And this was definitely one of those things. I'm like, I'm going to do this, this, and this. Well, I'll be productive and get it done. And I didn't need to do any of them. I could have taken a deep breath and said, you know what? I shouldn't feel pressured to do any of those things. They can all wait, and kind of gone from there. And the other lesson that popped up, I think we're on, what are we on? Number 3, number 4? I lost track. Somewhere in there. But the other lesson was once it happens, you can't unhappen it, right? You can't make it go backwards. When the chunk of metal was already in my tire, the leak had started, the event was real, I couldn't make it not happen. I couldn't undo any of that. My options were I could complain, or I could solve the problem and move forward. Or I guess I could do all three. So I complained a little at first, and then I started to solve the problem and move forward. And those are really your choices. You can sit in it and sat and wallow and say, oh, woe is me. Now I have a flat tire. I don't know what to do, or this makes me really angry. Or you could just get going and solve the problem and keep going on with your life and make the most of it. And that sounds kind of funny to say, because making the most of a flat tire, people are probably thinking well, you can't make the most of something like that. It's a really bad situation. But I did. I managed to catch up with someone who I hadn't seen in a long time at the Ford dealership. And actually, in a random ironic chance, my uncle was also at the Ford dealership, the one who used to work there. He was just visiting, so he came out to talk and to help me. And I hadn't seen him in a while either. So those are two things that came out of this situation that it was, that was a small silver lining, And once the tire went flat, my opinion about it didn't change the fact that it happened. If I got really angry, my tire would still be flat. If I got frustrated and got out and yelled and screamed and cursed whoever left something in the road, my tire would still be flat. If I called everybody I knew and complained that the street should be cleaner, my tire would still be flat. All those things, no matter what I did, the tire was still going to be flat. So why not do it happily? Why not let yourself just laugh it off and say sometimes God and the universe have a plan for us to make us slow down or maybe learn some lessons, but I'm in a safe place and I'll just pick up and move forward and solve the problem and keep walking forward as we go. So, and I think that's kind of a metaphor for life too, right? Once my tire went flat, my opinion about it didn't change the fact that it happened. That can draw you and pull you through so many things in life. Because if something happens to you that is upsetting or frustrating or bad or inconvenient or terrible, your opinion about it will not change the fact that it has already happened. You can't undo it. Your opinion of a bad day won't change the fact that it happened. You spill your coffee, you lose your keys, you're late for work. Your opinion on that, of being angry and trying to find someone to blame, will not change the fact that it happened. So take all your energy and put it into solving the problem or finding ways to have a good day or smile or take a deep breath, as opposed to putting all your energy into complaining and yelling and being angry at the situation, because that anger won't change the fact that it happened. You can't undo it. And that brings me into this idea of control what you can control. I said at the beginning of the episode, there are tons of things that happen during our day that we cannot control. And there are things that we can control. So put your energy into the things you can control, because that is what will carry you through the difficult situation. If you use all your energy up on the stuff you can't control, you'll be so depleted and worn out, you won't have any energy to actually put into solving the problem or focusing on the things you can control. The things I could control specifically yesterday were I could pull over safely. I could take a deep breath and stay calm and say, hey, listen, nothing catastrophic happened. Me and the truck are okay, thankfully. It's just a tire. I found a way to ask for help. I drove to the Ford dealership and said, hey, how are you? What are the chances you can give me a hand? I could change the tire. I know how to, obviously, but I could physically change it. I had a spare tire with me. I had the tools to do it. And then I could ask them to patch my regular tire, and I can get it back on my truck and be back in business on Monday, and then have my spare tire safely nestled back under my truck and have the regular front tire back on the front. Those were all things I could control. And that's what I put my energy into. And that's really critical and crucial, because if I stood on the side of the street yelling and screaming and getting angry for a half an hour or calling everybody I could think of to complain, by the time I drove to the Ford dealership, they might have been closed, or my tire probably would have been flat at that point, because I would have been sitting there yelling and screaming at the universe and the world that I got a flat tire, all while the precious air was leaking out of it. That precious air I needed to drive on to get to either the dealership or my house was going to leak out if I just stood there, yelling and screaming or calling anybody who would listen to me complain. And in that instance, the things I couldn't control were the big chunk of metal in my tire, the fact that it was leaking, and the timing. No amount of anger, frustration, complaining, cursing, screaming, calling my friends to complain, nothing could control any of that happening. I didn't put that chunk of metal in the road, but my tire found it. So if I yelled and screamed about it, that wouldn't make it not be in my tire. That would just make me tired and worn out and depleted and more frustrated, and the nail would still be in there. The air would still be leaking out if I stood there for 25 minutes yelling and screaming and calling all my friends to complain, just the way it would still leak out if I just said, hey, I'm time to drive and find a way to make a solution happen. And the timing, I also can't change that. If I said, well, why now? Or I should have stayed home, or this was so dumb. I can't, none of that is in my control anymore. It already happened. Complaining about it, being angry about it will not change the timing. It was still going to be Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock, and that's what I had going for me. Period. End of story. And I think peace often happens, and peace often comes when we stop fighting what already happened, if that makes sense. You can find a lot of peace and a lot of clarity maybe when you stop fighting and stop beating yourself against what already happened, because you can't make it so it didn't happen. We can't go back in time. Regardless of how you react, the action has already taken place. You can't undo it. And so I think the other thing that really got me thinking towards the end of this, once I got the tire change and everything, I'm like, okay, tire's on, here we go, I'm going back home. I got thinking, okay, well, now I'm a little worried. And why was I worried? I was borrowing trouble from tomorrow, so to speak, because I've got a soccer game to drive my son to on Sunday, a long way away. And I'm like, well, now I don't have a spare tire. What if I get another flat tire? What if I run something else over and now I'll get a flat tire and I don't have a spare? Then what will I do? I'll have to have my truck towed. I have to pull over on the side of the road. I won't be close to home. I'll be 50 miles from home, and if and on and on and on. And I can work myself into a tizzy until I realize that I was worrying about a second flat tire before I'd even driven a single mile. I was worried about the what if this happens. Well, what if something else goes wrong? What if I get another flat tire with no spare? Then what? But I can't just stay home until Monday. I can't hide in my house and hope that the world stops spinning and I don't have anything to do. I have to do things. I have to drive a couple places. I have to go somewhere today and get something accomplished. So I think the lesson here is prepare reasonably, but don't let hypothetical problems steal today's peace. Don't let the what-ifs of this world control your day today and say, oh my God, well, I'm so worried now because I can't go anywhere. I won't have my spare back till Monday. What do I do? Oh no. You can't just hide from the world. And also try to put some probability and some realistic spin on it. Knock on wood, I hadn't had a flat tire literally in probably 15 years. So it took 15 years for this one to show up, which knock on wood, thank God for that. I'm very thankful that it took that long. But also, if I say, hey, I'm not going to go anywhere from now on, where does that get me? What are the chances of it happening tomorrow? Are flat tires something I have to deal with every 3 days? No, thankfully, they're not. So what does staying home and worrying do for me in the grand scheme of, hey, what's the realistic probability that you're going to have to worry about not having a spare tire? And now, I might end up with another flat that I'm going to have to eat all my words from this podcast, but the truth still remains that worrying about it now and borrowing trouble from tomorrow, so to speak, won't do me any good. And it'll just make me more upset and more frustrated and more angry and worry more and on and on and on. So yeah, don't steal trouble from tomorrow. Don't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow before you've even started tomorrow, because life requires you to still keep moving. Okay. we can't stop living because something might go wrong. If we did that, no one would ever go anywhere. No one would ever go anywhere if all we worried about was, oh my God, well, something might go wrong. I can't even leave the house. And I worry driving without a spare for a day or two. Oh boy, well, what if something goes wrong? Okay, well, what if something goes right? What if you drive for 2 days and the spare tire is fine on the front and your tire gets fixed at the Ford dealership and you go pick it up and everything's happy? And this doesn't just pertain to driving. Starting a new project can be something that's a great example of people what-ifing themselves to death. Well, what if I start this project and it doesn't go the way I want it to? Well, okay, well, then you have to make some adjustments or make some changes. Well, what if I try this thing and it doesn't work out? Or what if I try this thing and I'm bad at it? Well, then you can either keep practicing and become better at it, or you can say, this thing really isn't for me, and just say that's something you tried once and didn't enjoy, and you can move on with your life. And this is I think, runs a current through everybody's life with whatever they're focused on, whatever they're worrying about and trying to prepare for or start. For me, when I go to speak in front of a group, sometimes I could say, well, what if this doesn't go well? What if they don't like me? What if they don't laugh at the little jokes I plan to interject in here? What if? And really, if that stops you from going forward, I'm missing the whole point of actually speaking to the group at all. The point is to get out there and speak and pass along a message I'm passionate about. The goal is to help people and be a change agent for people. The goal isn't to worry whether or not it's going to go well before it even happened. And this is true, I think, in pursuing our goals, no matter what your goals are, no matter what you're pursuing or what you're working on in this life. If life requires us to keep moving forward. We can't just hide inside and worry that, well, what if something goes wrong? Then what will I do? Because the answer is, if you stop moving forward and stop living, you won't ever get anywhere. No goal will get accomplished if you just sit there and spin your wheels and because you're too afraid to move forward. And, there's always a reason to stay parked if you focus on what could go wrong. I could have said, I'm going to leave my truck there. I'm going to find a different way to get to soccer. I'll make somebody else drive, yada, on and on and on, right? I could have said all these things. Well, I'm leaving my truck there because I don't have a spare tire now and I'm worried because something could go wrong. What if? Or I could just say, let's try it. We'll be careful. We'll take the truck. We'll go to soccer and fingers crossed that everything will be okay. And all these things add up to kind of a bigger life application. So my flat tire yesterday, obviously, clearly, I've been talking about it for the past half hour, got me thinking about a lot of things. But I think there's so many things in our life that we can connect this idea, this flat tire idea and struggle to lots of things that we might encounter. I know we can relate it to things like relationship struggles or financial struggles or health concerns or career obstacles or burnout or personal wellness and all that stuff. Because we need to focus on the things that we can control, and we need to focus on the things that we want to pursue, and we need to work on and solve the problems that show up in front of us instead of just getting angry and kicking and screaming and being mad at the situation itself. Because like I said, the situation isn't going to change unless we change it for the better. Period. If I just sat there parked on the side of the road, my tire would just have gone flat and I would have been in a little bit worse situation than I was in when it first happened, and I would be another 45 minutes older, right? I would have been, a little more time would have passed, but if I stayed angry and I didn't take any steps to fix the situation, I would physically not have gone anywhere in regards to driving my truck, and I also would have emotionally and, theoretically gotten nowhere in solving the problem. I would have just sat there and been angry. And it's like this, like I said, that whole list, burnout, relationships, financial stuff, health stuff. If you don't take some positive and proactive action to solve the problem and work on the things you want to work on and work on the things that you see that are right in front of you as problems, they're never going to go away and just get better. So life will occasionally flatten your plans, so to speak, pun intended. But it doesn't need to flatten your entire spirit. Please don't let it beat you down so much. The bad things that happen in our life, please don't let them get you down so much that you can't find the energy to get up and get going and keep going forward. Because that's the really important part. And when awful things happen, please hear me when I tell you frustration is normal. Frustration is okay. Anger is okay. You can call that one friend and say, oh my God, you'll never guess what happened to me. But don't stay there. Remember that it could have been worse. It could have been a lot worse when things go wrong. And even when things go really wrong, do your best to try to take a breath and be thankful for find one little thing, even if it's a really bad situation, because I know a flat tire is nothing compared to some other awful situations in this world. And I'm not diminishing the bad things that anyone has been through or encountered. But when you encounter those, try to find at least one little thing that you can focus on where you can have that little takeaway of it could have been worse because X, and fill in the blank with that one little thing that could have been worse. And also remember, not everything is urgent. If your gut is telling you, hey, it's time to stay home and just enjoy your free time, you can do that. It's okay to do that. It's okay to have some downtime. It's okay to rest. It's okay to just putz around in your yard or your garage or not really do anything that you deem, quote unquote, super productive. So not everything is urgent. And when we go through anything, whether it's a situation like my flat tire or whether it's a challenge that you face in your everyday life of getting to work or getting the kids where they have to be or losing your keys or finishing a job, anything like that, remember, you can't undo the bad thing that happened along the way. You have to just pick up and deal with it and find a way to move through it rather than just yell and scream and complain about it. And we do that by controlling what we can. We don't waste our energy on the things we can't control. We give our energy to the things we can control and work through them one at a time. Take a deep breath and work through it one at a time. Solve that problem, and once that one is solved, then you solve the next one, and then the next one, and the next one, and pretty soon you'll be out the other side of the storm. And when you're doing all this, keep moving forward and don't worry about the hypothetical future problems. Don't say, well, yeah, I solved this problem, but now what if this happens? Well, what if it happens? But more importantly, what if it doesn't happen? What if you go about your day and everything turns out just fine? That can be okay too. That'll be really good if it's what's the best that could happen. We always think that, right? We always think what's the worst that could happen. We very seldom think, well, what's the best that could happen? So as we close, sometimes life's going to shove a giant chunk of metal in your tire. And you can stand there angry and frustrated and wishing it hadn't happened, or you can grab the jack, change the tire, and drive yourself home and keep moving forward. The setback may slow you down, but it doesn't have to stop you. That's the really important thing to remember. It can slow you down. It can make you pause. It can make you work through things one at a time, but don't let it stop you. And, keep moving. I like this idea of a spare tire, right? Because a spare tire is something we carry with us to be prepared in the event that something goes wrong. So whatever your flat tire might be, even if it's not a physical tire, keep moving even if you're riding on the spare. Even if you say, this isn't the best situation because I had to put my spare tire on and now I don't have another one. Right? That's me. That's my actual situation. But if you are different, and I don't mean with a physical tire, I mean, use that as a metaphor for the other thing in your life that you're trying to use to get by for now because something else has gone wrong. Keep moving, even if that's what you're working with. Don't let life stop you if it throws something in your way like a flat tire or like a big challenge or like a hurdle or a setback or a loss of a job or a loss of a relationship or moving to a new place. All those things are big hurdles along the way, and all those things take a lot of energy to get through. But do exactly that. Use your energy to get through them. Don't use your energy to sit there and just be angry and try to yell and scream about the things you can't control. My friends, I want to thank you so much for listening today. Wherever you are in this world, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time and appreciate you listening. Wherever you're going, drive safe. Watch out for giant chunks of metal in the road and take really, really good care. I appreciate you all very much. Thanks for tuning in to Todd Talk. If you've liked what you've heard, please go ahead and subscribe and follow along so you don't miss any updates or new episodes. Thanks very much and enjoy the rest of your day.